I really love working for organizations that I resonate with and that are doing something that I care about. I find I get a lot of sort of satisfaction and motivation out of working for causes that I really care about. There's always going to be times in any role where you get a bit overwhelmed or stressed or you're not loving,
Mm,
the
mm.
day to day. And I think having that sort of underpinning motivation is really helpful for me and something I really value. So yeah, I obviously did my research and looked into Place to Be as an organization and just thought like what incredible work they're doing. And that's definitely grown even more as I've worked for them for the last 5 years as well.
That was Jess Brain, Head of Operations at Place to Be. Place to Be are a leading children's mental health charity in the UK. They've been supporting the mental well-being of pupils, families and school staff for nearly 3 decades. With 1 in 5 children experiencing probable mental health conditions and half of all lifetime mental health issues beginning by the age of 14, Place to Be's work is more crucial than ever. Jess brings a wealth of experience from her background in event management, spanning not-for-profits, environmental sustainability, and local governments. She's passionate about using her talents to make a positive impact in the world, and she's been great to work with over the last couple of years, and she is a truly inspiring person. In this episode, Jess will share her insights on the importance of mental health in schools, the challenges and successes of coordinating events for social good, and how Place to Be are making a lasting impact on the lives of young people across the UK. Stay tuned for an inspiring and informative conversation. Well, I'm delighted today to be joined by Jess Brain, who is Head of Operations in the Mental Health Workforce Department for Place to Be. Welcome, Jess.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Yeah, likewise. Really excited to have you on. It's been probably maybe a year and a half since we actually first spoke. So really, really keen to hear a bit more about your experiences today and how you've ended up in the role that you're in. Do you want to start just by telling us a little bit, I guess, about Place to Be and the organisation that you currently work for?
Yeah, absolutely. So Place to Be, primarily, we're a children's mental health charity working in the UK and supporting children and young people all throughout the UK. We're quite a multifaceted organisation with our fingers in a lot of pies, I guess you could say. Our sort of primary way that we work is we place child counsellors in schools all around the UK, and we work with a lot of our partner schools in that way to deliver one-to-one support to children and young people in the safe school setting environment. We also do a lot of work supporting teachers and parents and those sort of communities that wrap around a child, because we really believe in the whole school approach, is what we call it. So supporting the whole school community can really do wonders for supporting a child's mental health and making sure that that's accessible and easy for them to access in a safe environment as well. We do a lot of parenting courses. As I said, we do training on mental health for teachers and school staff. And then the department that I'm part of, the mental health workforce, we actually train people to become child counsellors. Because as we know, there's sort of growing cases of children and young people needing and seeking mental health support. And with that, there needs to be more people who are trained sort of safely and ethically to work with them and be their counsellor and support them. So that's what my team do. We train people from no experience right through to being qualified counsellors and able to work with children and young people.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was going to say, so that's quite it feels like that's a fairly new topic, generally speaking, of mental health support for children. How long has the charity existed?
Well, we've been going around for about 30 years now. This is our 30th anniversary this year, actually.
Ah, fantastic. Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so obviously we've grown a lot in that time. It kind of started off with just a few schools in London. And, over those 30 years, it's grown from just those few schools with, a counsellor in each school delivering one-to-one support to working in, I think we're in almost 600 schools around the UK now, as well as our outreach programs and then the training sort of side of the organisation as well. And then on the training side, we've been delivering counselling training and training people to become child counsellors for about 25 years.
Wow.
So we were one of the first organisations in the UK to deliver training that was specific to child counselling. Previously, most training courses were kind of adult focused, not child focused.
Really? So the charity started with adult training? Okay.
Not the charity, sorry, but like if you were wanting to become a counsellor, there
Yeah.
wasn't, previous to Place to Be's training courses, there wasn't any course that sort of focused just on child counselling. Because as you can imagine, it's quite different working with a child than it
Mm,
is with an adult. You have to be a bit more playful and
yeah.
able to play, and there's paint involved usually and Play-Doh and all those kinds of things. And you have to work with metaphor a bit more because children and young people don't always have the words to describe what might be happening or how they're feeling.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And it's very interesting. Lots of experimental behavior learning. Yeah, interesting. You mentioned there just in terms of where you get the counselors from, I guess, what makes a good counselor. I'm just interested to hear because you mentioned, starting from no experience. So what would it literally just be? Just talking to me a little bit about where you might find those counselors. Is it just kind of putting forms out there and just seeing who's interested, or are there a particular type of demographic that you try to engage with this program?
Yeah, so we find that a lot of people tend to sort of sidestep into counselling after working with children in some capacity. So that might be as a teacher aide, it might be as a youth worker,
Mm.
it might be sort of something like that, or a daycare or nursery worker where they're working with children and young people, but in a more care sort of setting. And then they might be a bit involved in like the safeguarding side of things within that school or nursery, etc., or, supporting special needs, etc. And then, they kind of sidestep into counselling from there. Although in saying that, we absolutely also get people who have had previous careers as accountants or,
Oh, really? Yeah.
in finance, and they just want a complete change and want to do something where they feel like they're giving back or sort of making a sort of really tangible long-term difference in people's lives. So we do definitely get people interested in the career from that side of things as well.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, cool. With those sorts of roles that you might advertise, let's say if I'm an accountant, where typically would you hear about Place to Be? Would that be from connections with schools that you think maybe if you've got children at a school, is that typically a source of where you might find people or?
Yeah, so sometimes it's if they might know about Place to Be because, yes, their child might have gone to a school that had Place to Be services.
Mm,
They might, have worked in or around a school that had the services. Or, I mean, we also get a lot of people, as I said, we're sort of there's more competition in the market, I guess you can say now, but in the training space. But certainly if you're sort of Googling how to become a child counsellor, Place to Be, we've been around for so long and are so experienced in training people that we do sort of pop up first. And we have really good, I think in the training world of counselling training, we have quite a good reputation as well. So if you know someone that's a counsellor, they might recommend us as well.
yeah, interesting. Yeah, totally agree with that. And I see a lot of what Place to Be do online and very
Yeah.
much big advocates of youth mental health. And
Yeah.
also I noticed for Pride Month, you're very good at staying topical with some of
Yeah.
the things that are going on, the trends and events. Yes, it's really good. And how did you get involved, Jess? Because I think just to touch on a little bit about your background for the listeners that don't know, where were you kind of born and raised? You were born and raised in Australia?
Yes, as you can tell, I've got a bit of an accent.
Yeah.
Although I think it's fading, which I'm a bit sad about. But yes, I'm from Australia, Brisbane in
Mhm,
Australia, and I moved to the UK about 5.5 years ago and have worked for Place to Be my whole time in the UK so
mhm.
far.
How did you find about Place to Be? Was that before you moved over, or is it a case you moved to London and then
It
found the
was
charity? Or
Yeah, it was actually before I moved. I didn't move for the job like at all. I was sort of moving without a job in place, wanted to try something different and live somewhere really far away, I guess. But actually, before I sort of made the move, I'd already decided it was happening. I'd resigned from my previous role, etc. I'd given up my flat, all of those things. And I changed my location on LinkedIn to say that I was in London and looking for work. I've sort of previously in my career have worked for charities and in the not-for-profit sector for most of my career. So recruiter got in touch with me about a role at Place to Be, which was a fixed term role. It was a contract, like a short-term contract role for a maternity cover. Yeah, so and I just thought, oh great, like I was just so keen to have a job offer, I guess. But
yeah,
I also really care. I think the sort of thread throughout my career has been I really love working for organizations that I resonate with and that are doing something that I care about. I find I get a lot of sort of satisfaction and motivation out of working for causes that I really care about. There's always going to be times in any role where you get a bit overwhelmed or stressed, or you're not loving,
Mm,
the
mm.
day to day. And I think having that sort of underpinning motivation is really helpful for me and something I really value. So yeah, I obviously did my research and looked into Place to Be as an organization and just thought like what incredible work they're doing. And that's definitely grown even more as I've worked for them for the last 5 years as well.
Yeah, amazing. And you've been on quite a journey as well with Place to Be. So
Yeah.
you're in your now fourth job title in that sort of 5.5 period. So kudos to you and the job that you're doing, because obviously you are growing through that organization. You started as a challenge events manager. So I know
Yeah.
that from looking at your kind of CV and your background, you very much come from that event and fundraising, the management space, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I studied event management at university, and I probably have just always been quite an organized and, planned out person. And yeah, my sort of first roles in my real career were very much events focused. So, event management. I worked for a local council in Australia. In there, they had a big sort of community engagement team. We'd organize a lot of events, small, like, ranging from like a picnic in the park for parents to big music concerts, but all about getting the community engaged and involved with each other.
Mm.
And then worked for the RSPCA in Australia, which I think stands for the same thing as it does here in the UK, animal welfare organisation. And again, that was more fundraising events, but like big mass participation. We had a great event called the Million Paws Walk, which was basically a giant dog walk
Wow.
where hundreds of
Is
people.
it literally as it sounds, a million paws?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So to be like, something like 40 locations all around Australia, people come with their dogs on the day and do a big,
Wow.
5K loop or something like that with their dog all together.
Wow. That is a lot of dogs. So
It is a lot of dogs, yes.
amazing. Have you got photos of that event? Because I'd love to
Oh
see
yeah, definitely. I'll send some through. You can
them.
imagine a lot of poo bags we used on that.
Yeah, I bet. Is that something that they do in the UK, or is that an Australian thing?
Oh, no. Maybe we should bring it over.
Yeah. Very good. So yeah, you started up kind of through that sort of fundraising event space. And
Yeah.
then what's a challenge event then for Place to Be? What is
Yeah.
a challenge event?
Yeah, so challenge event again is in the fundraising world. So that is when you see those crazy people doing a marathon or doing a skydive, or there's treks, there's swims, there's all kinds of crazy things that people do, but anything that's kind of a physical challenge basically that people are taking on and raising money for a charity as part of that. So I'm sure we've all been hit up by friends doing the London Marathon and saying,
Hmm.
"Oh, can you donate to this charity that I'm
Hmm.
I'm running for?" So that was sort of the group of fundraisers that I would support and oversee. And we'd have places on a whole bunch of different events that we would be filling, such as London Marathon. Shout out if anyone's looking for a spot.
Someone will be.
And well, exactly. So I would work with those amazing fundraisers and help them reach their fundraising targets and make sure we'd filled up all the spots that we had on the events as well.
Yeah, really good. And it's very interesting actually, because your career path and your beginnings are very similar actually to Rostify's beginnings, in the sense of founded in Australia. We started with those sort of
Yeah,
fundraising and sports events that were linked with charities, and then
yeah,
gradually have gone into more sort of complex charity volunteering programs. So, quite similar in a way to what you've done there, and quite interested to just hear. So you've got really extensive experience there on those fundraising event side, and you touched on it at the start. A big aspect of that is the community.
yeah.
So really keen to get your thoughts a little bit around when you are looking to fundraise and have people to contribute and compete at these events. How best do you engage with those people in the community? How do you keep in touch with people and get them involved in the mission?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, stewardship, and which is basically, community building and connecting with people and making them feel involved is such a huge part of fundraising, of course, but really of any kind of engagement, trying to keep people engaged, any kind of, customer or student or whatever it might be. Stewardship is like just such an important part of that. And I think it is really about connecting people to the cause. Obviously, if they're reaching out to you, you already know that they're connected in some way, but we would also have to do, a lot of promotion and marketing and saying, is this something you care about? You could make a difference.
Mm.
We'd be showing stories about the children that are being supported and helped, showing the real impact, I guess, of the support of that person and what it could do.
Hmm.
And then really, I think a lot of the time, people love to chat.
Yeah.
It's so great to hear about people's motivations and their personal connections. So I think really making sure you're getting that story out of people and asking questions and just sort of letting them have their say and share their connection and their motivation is really special and really important in that as well, and in helping them feel connected.
Yeah, definitely. And then do you sort of bundle that up and do you record some of those conversations and share those on the socials? How best would you kind of, I
Yeah.
guess, in a way, market it to the rest of the community? How do you keep kind of people hearing
Yeah,
about those stories?
definitely. We're always on the hunt for a good supporter story. But yeah, totally we do a lot of blogs on our website. We do sort of like quotes and a few little videos. And you'll notice if you've visited the Place to Be Instagram page, there's tons of pictures of supporters on there doing all sorts of different things, which again is just kind of showing, oh, this is something you can do. Funnily enough, Place to Be as a charity, maybe 10 years ago, not many people thought of Place to Be as a charity. They knew the services we provided, but we really had to do quite a lot of work in showing fundraising as something that was part of the organization and that was really important and something that we needed. So you can kind of see that progression over the years of fundraising and those stories really taking a bit more of a front seat in our sort of outward messaging.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, very
Yeah.
good. And you've then progressed through. So you were kind of head community fundraising manager, head of community and challenge events, and now you're in a position of head of operations. And one of we obviously speak to a lot of charities, and one of the big challenges that charities always face is those different silos and pockets of an organization. So
Yeah.
you've seen there was a UK giving report that was released in February of this year where it showed that 75% of people in the UK had done something charitable, whether it be donating to a page, whether it be kind of donating a bag of clothes to a store, giving some of their time, doing a marathon, as you say, those sorts of things. Just interested to know with Place to Be, because you have these different silos, these different pockets and programs within the organization.
Yeah.
How much of a challenge and a focus, I guess, is it for you at the moment to try and tie some of those different aspects together?
Yeah, it's absolutely a focus. I think that with an organization like Place to Be that does have so many different offerings, I guess, or different ways that people can be engaged with the organization, it's so important to have a way to see how someone is involved and all the different ways that they're crossing over. And that means that you can't really work in silo. We have like a CRM system basically for our fundraisers and our
Mhm.
sort of supporters in that way, so that we can see, oh, someone's fundraising for us by doing a marathon, but oh, look, they're also doing a training course with us.
Mm.
Because a lot of the time people do have more than one interaction when you are offering so many things. And with that, while internally we might think, oh, well, we do really different things. You've got your remit, I've got mine. On the outside, people don't see that. To them, we're just Place to Be one big same thing. And so I think removing silos internally and working together and communicating and having a good idea of who to talk to about what in the
Yeah.
organization is so incredibly important, not just for that reason, the supporter having a good experience no matter how they're involving themselves or interacting with the organization, but I think it can help save money, which obviously charities love that. It can remove admin work, it can save time, it just gives people a better experience. There's so many benefits to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of questions, I guess. Is that the biggest challenge that you think you face in your role, those silos, or what challenges do you think you come up against the most?
Yeah, I think it certainly has been. When I moved into my current role, the head of operations role for the workforce team, that was sort of one of my first sort of challenges that I wanted to overcome.
Mhm.
We work with lots of different teams in the organization. We work with obviously our marketing and comms team to get the word out there about what our training courses. We work with the placements team. Some of our courses include a counselling placement in a school. The placements team are the ones that sort of organise which school they'll be in, etc. We work with our school teams. There's so many different teams that we have to work with. And it was kind of at a point where we had obviously working relationships with them, but there were some sticking points, and there were just some ways of working that they did things their way, we did things our way, and they just never quite married up, which was causing frustration on both sides. It was like taking a lot more time to get things done. It meant that the student was kind of having the same conversations with maybe three different people within the same organization, which just is a bit illogical. So
Mm.
over the last sort of year and a half, that's something I've really focused on with my team, in building those relationships with other teams in the organization, really working with them to understand, well, how do you work and why do you work that way? And helping them understand the ways we work and why we do things our way.
Mm.
And then figuring out, well, how can we join this up? Can we make this one process? Can we, I think encouraging my team to think a bit outside the box. Don't just do things because that's how it's always been done. Like, how can it be done differently? Where can we make improvements, etc.?
Excellent. Yeah. Okay. And you were saying just before we got on this call about how in your previous role there were people in the building that you'd not spoken to in these other
Yeah.
departments, and that kind of highlights it. And you touched on a really important point there around, well, the child, the beneficiary of this program, is
Mm,
having to repeat things, and they're getting told different things by different people, and
mm,
that could be a big challenge, I guess, and it certainly impacts the experience of your mentors, but also of the children
yeah.
that are benefiting from the program as well. So it is an important point to mention. And it sounds like, so one of the areas that you've worked on by the sounds of it is you're doing kind of internal sort of workshops and conversations, are you, just to try and figure out who's doing what and how we can align some of those things?
Yeah, and we've done quite a lot of process mapping as
Mm.
well, and quite a lot of sort of data, well, data
Yeah.
as we speak in the
I work with
UK.
Australians every day, so I'm used to the fact
So
that
you're used to the
uh,
data.
yeah, absolutely. This is your
um,
organization from events shining through here, Jess.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. But data is gold, that in the best way possible, which generally means having a good system to hold it in. And I mean, Rostify has definitely helped on that side of things as well.
Yeah, excellent. And just, I guess, to touch on that, I guess, briefly. So when we first spoke, so this would
Mm,
have been, well, actually, do you want to just talk through, I guess, how that came about? Because obviously
yeah,
you had a program that was running
yeah,
already. How were you working before
yeah.
you came and spoke to Rostify? How did that start?
Yeah, so we use Rostify maybe slightly differently to how it's traditionally used. We use Rostify to manage, as I've mentioned, we deliver training courses, and we have a pool of contracted trainers that we use who deliver the training courses. And previous to using Rostify, we had a spreadsheet, of course, that had people's details on it, their contact details and their availability details, and information about what different courses they could deliver, because we have a range of different types of courses and not everyone can deliver everything. And we also had, all the different program teams who would potentially be talking to the same trainer, but asking them the same questions, asking them, are you available on this date? But two different teams in the same organization asking about the same dates. It was just causing so many logistical, administrative issues and wasting a lot of time. And so that's why we started looking into sort of a trainer management system, as we call it, something that could, on one hand, be like a central place of truth for trainers' details. So having one place where it's got all their contact details, trainers can update those details themselves. So you're never having to worry about things being outdated. They can update their availability. We can have a log of what they are able to deliver, the different courses they can deliver. And then on the other side of that as well is the scheduling side of things, obviously. Having one place where anyone in the training or sort of program teams can log on, can see, right, what's this trainer already signed up to deliver? When are they available? Can I ask them about this date? No, they've already delivering something for someone else. We can do expressions of interest, sort of send out to the trainers who's available for this training, etc. So having that sort of centralized information storage and the rostering people on and scheduling people on to deliver different programs as well, and having that in one central place was the reason for looking for a system, and that's how we found Restify.
Yeah, excellent. And just out of interest, when you were looking, because that's what you've just described, it's not necessarily an obvious thing. So, how do you go and find something that helps you with that? Were you Googling and just looking at a few different options of
Basically.
potential, yeah, having conversations? It's quite tricky, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of started by looking at kind of like shift management
Hmm.
software and those kinds of things. And then yes, we definitely looked into like volunteer management systems because we recognized there were quite a few similarities in that and what we were trying to do. I guess really the main difference is we also use Rostify to do the payroll for the
Mm.
people delivering trainings, which we've built some fancy automations to do that for us. But yeah, it came up through just sort of Google searching, got in touch, met yourself, had some calls and demos. We obviously had there's quite a few uniquenesses, I guess, to how Place to Be work and what we wanted a system to be able to do. And Rostify was, from the sort of research we did, was really the only system that ticked all the boxes that we were looking for. And I think that's because it's so customizable. You can change almost everything in it, which obviously takes a bit more time in the setup to make it work how you want it to. But once you've done that, yeah, it's really flexible.
Yeah, and you've got this kind of use case feels like maybe one of the more complex ones, isn't it? In terms of you've got some real intricacies there when it comes to scheduling of, I mean, how
Yeah.
many schools do you support, Jess? Did you say 600?
Yeah.
And they're all over the UK, so Scotland as well. And
Yes. Yes.
yeah,
Scotland, Wales as well, and then all throughout England.
yeah, absolutely. And then COVID happened sort of
Mhm.
1 year into your Place to Be career. Has that shifted a lot of things online as well? Have you got a lot of virtual sessions, or is it still a lot of face to face briefings that happen?
Yeah, so obviously, yes, during COVID, we had to very rapidly adapt as an organization in almost every aspect of the
Yeah.
organization. On the training side of things, there's definitely some courses we deliver now that we didn't deliver before COVID, and they are online
Hmm.
courses, particularly our mental health champions course, which is for sort of school staff, anyone who works in a school, to help them sort of learn and understand a bit more about children's mental health. We launched that during COVID, actually, and in the first, I think it was 6 months of the program being running, we had 50,000 school teachers and staff access that program.
Wow.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
I mean, I think COVID and the pandemic highlighted, I mean, obviously it's a weird, very weird silver lining that it exacerbated the issue of children's mental health, but it also highlighted the need for support for children's mental health. And I think therefore people were looking for information and they wanted to learn. And then so it was just good timing, I think, that we had this program in development. We received funding during COVID to really be able to push it out there, and the interest was there, I guess.
Amazing. How's that changed since COVID? Because there's quite a lot of charities that we speak to where they will tell me that volunteering numbers have dropped. They've lost
Mm.
touch with quite a lot of volunteers through COVID or some of their mentors and stuff. Have you found that? I guess that was almost the busiest time for you. So has that momentum maintained, or is it kind of siloed a bit since
Yeah.
dropped off a little since then? Or
I mean, I think there was definitely an initial burst on that side of things for some trainings in particular, but I think it's now remaining quite steady. I think that the interest is still there. I think on the counselling training side of things, that one's quite interesting because we don't deliver those trainings online. We did for a bit during COVID, but we have gone back to in person, and that's similar to our school services. So the counsellors based in schools. Obviously, during COVID, we adapted. We did phone sessions, we did Zoom sessions, etc. But counselling is such a relational activity, I guess you could call it, that it is so different in person to online. And particularly with a child or a young person, you and I can have a conversation through the computer like we're doing now, but it is so different trying to sort of engage with a child over through a screen and through a laptop. Whereas when you're in a room with them, you're able to play, that play element of counseling is so key, and you just can't really do that in the same way online. And so our training matches that, the sort of skills and skills practice and role play. That's such an important part of the training, which we really do think is better learnt and experienced in person.
yeah, I could totally see that. That makes a lot of sense. And then just talking about, so I think when we very first spoke, when you came through the website, you had some sessions where there's clashes and maybe you've got a no show for the session. Because obviously you were going through COVID, I guess, with that burst of activity and also still on
Mm.
kind of spreadsheets, not really having systems in place to manage it. How was that? Because that sounds like it could have been quite a challenge.
Yes, it was. Yeah, I mean, I think really everyone in the whole organization, I mean, I don't know if it's the same at Rostify, but pre-lockdown and COVID, we didn't work from home. We didn't have work laptops or anything like that.
Oh,
So there
really?
was
Okay.
the challenge of everyone, the staff managing everything had to really quickly be set up with all the equipment to do so. You then had to learn to work in a very different way. And then there was managing sicknesses and people being unwell and being off or having to drop out really last minute, which we had to accept and roll with and find a different time, etc. So it really was like the whole team, the whole organization really had to be so adaptive and so flexible and able to change and adapt and move quite quickly in that time. I feel like we've now kind of settled into a bit more of a steady way of working. But I think what we've all learned about that flexibility and adaptability, it still is like such a useful skill that I think we all use today. We're still always trying to make sure we're doing things in the best way, and that sort of flexibility and thinking of things like how can we do something differently. I think, we did learn that a lot and have to use that skill a lot during COVID.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a huge challenge. And you've obviously done a very good job because you've obviously been able to grow the program during that time. So yeah, kudos to you and the team for being able to pull that all together. I'm interested to know, so you've been in the charities existed for 25, 30 years.
Yeah.
Do you find that there are any people that have maybe gone through that program where maybe they did receive some support from Place to Be and have since come back? Does that happen at all?
Yeah, so we do. I mean, yeah, obviously on the counselling, like in school side of things, we've been around for 30 years. And particularly when I was in the fundraising team, it was always so heartwarming. Every now and then you'd have someone who would get in touch about wanting to do some fundraising for the charity, and you'd obviously say to them like, oh, tell me a bit about why. And they would say, oh, well, I received support from Place to Be when I was at school, and it changed the course of my life, and I still remember my counsellor and blah blah blah.
Wow.
And that is always so heartwarming to hear and to see. We also, though, get a lot of people who say, I wish I'd had the support of something like Place to Be when I was at school, and now I want to support or get involved, or I've received counselling and it's been transformational, and that's why I want to go down this career path, or whatever, their connection might be.
Yeah, it's really powerful. And school has changed a lot as well, isn't it, in that time period where mobile phones, on the
Yeah,
online, the internet, that everyone's got access to everything immediately. It's changed so
yes,
much probably in that time span. And
yeah.
that's probably, I guess, is that part of the training now that you're factoring in of that? Because that's a big factor on a child's mental health, I'd imagine.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's as much like sort of integrated into our training for people working with children as much as it is in the training and support we give to parents and teachers, because we're all having to learn about the impact of that and how to speak with children about that. And children do get a lot of connection with their friends and their communities online now.
Mm.
I think, you have to be careful about not completely taking that away and isolating them from that connection, but setting up boundaries and doing it in a safe way, and having some time limits or whatever it might be that works for that family or whatever it might be, and helping children be aware of the dangers that can be out there as well when it comes to online and mobile phones and everything else.
Yeah, a big challenge because everything moves so quickly as well, doesn't it? There's new technologies moving so fast that keeping
Yes,
up the training up to date with the latest trends and the things that are happening must be a challenge. So yeah, you guys are doing an amazing job. Just interested then. So when you look at you kind of one of the questions I've got written down here is what advice would you give to yourself maybe
mm,
10 years ago when running a program like this? Have you had some time to think about that answer? Is that what
I
you've been
have.
doing?
Yes, I liked this one. It really made me sit back.
Mm,
I kind of thought of three different bits of advice I would give myself. One, I think, is this is such a cliche, but don't sweat the small stuff. I think that, I oversee quite a broad like range of programs, and there's a lot of moving pieces in that, and there's so much detail and information within all of that. And I can't possibly know it all and remember it all. But I have an amazing team who I work with, and I completely trust them and know that they're amazing at what they do. And sometimes I just have to be okay with not knowing all the details, and I have to be okay with not making the decision or not being involved. And obviously that comes with time and experience and everything else. But I think it's really easy to see something and really let it get to you and get stressed out about it. And when you kind of take a step back, you can then see like, oh, okay, maybe I didn't need to stress that much about that thing.
Hmm.
So that would definitely be something. I think the other piece of advice is just about like seeing everything as an opportunity to get more experience. I think I've certainly benefited in my sort of career journey in having a lot of different experiences, getting whether that's through different roles or being involved in different projects within the organizations I've worked with, and sort of being happy to put my hand up to try something I haven't tried before. I think that's how you kind of build up those transferable skills, or that sort of just breadth of experience. And you just never know when that experience will come in handy and when you might benefit from being able to say or think, oh, that's like the time I did this, and I've learnt XYZ because of that.
Mm.
I think, yeah, just sort of getting involved and throwing yourself in and trying as many different things as possible is hugely beneficial. And then something I'm really big on is sort of, I guess that it's a bit of a mindset thing, but focusing on improvements and how you can make things better rather than focusing on, oh, this isn't working well, or getting really frustrated because you've hit a standstill with something, and just trying to always look at things sort of constructively, I guess, and approach things in a constructive way, and
Hmm.
just look at how you can make things better, basically.
I like that. I really, really like the point about everything's a learning experience, and don't get too maybe disheartened at the time, because
Yeah.
ultimately that could pop up as something that you've really
Well,
learned from going forward.
usually the things that don't go well, you learn the most from. So,
That's it. I like
yeah,
that. It's very good advice. I guess just quickly, Jess, just looking forwards, what's next for Place to Be? Obviously, you've been in this operations role now for a year and a half, is it?
yeah,
What's next for the organization? What initiatives have you got
yeah,
launching? I've seen a few things online. Do you want to just quickly talk about some of those?
yeah, absolutely. So, certainly on the counselling training side of things, we have really ambitious plans going into the future. We are really passionate about increasing the size of the mental health workforce, so having more people trained to work with children in a therapeutic setting. And we're really, really passionate about making sure that that workforce is as diverse as possible and really reflect the children and young people that we're supporting. So we've got a range of sort of projects and initiatives that we're working on to address both of those. One of which is we've just actually finished assessing an application round for bursaries that we're offering to a lot of our courses. So yes, just started offering bursaries for our introduction and then qualifying courses, which we're really excited about, being able to support people from, again, that sort of no official counselling training experience right through to
Mm.
being qualified, and
Was
then
that one
help.
of the barriers, Jess, that was highlighted in terms of that you're talking there about diversity, and that's something that a lot of people are thinking about. How do you make programs inclusive as possible?
Yeah,
Is that one of the barriers that was highlighted?
yeah, certainly, definitely. I mean, and that's for a number of reasons, I guess. I think training to be a counsellor is quite expensive and it
Hmm.
takes a lot of time. And it's, I guess, historic or traditionally quite a white female middle class profession, I would
Yep.
say, as a lot of the sort of caring professions are. And so we're really to change that. But with that also means making, you can invite people in the door, but if it's not a welcoming environment once they get in, then they're not going to stick around. So making the content of our training diverse and inclusive, making sure our training team are diverse and inclusive and aware of everything that comes along with that. It's a real, it can't just the promotion and getting people signed up. It has to be the whole way through the program. Otherwise, it's never going to work. So that's something that we're really focusing on as an organization and as a team directly in the next sort of 6 months, year onwards as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that something that you track just out of interest? We've had X amount of applicants, and this is
Yeah.
a kind of a rough spread of the different diversities that we've had come through as applicants, and then how many of them actually made it to the end of the course and became counsellors? Is that something that you monitor?
It's something that we've always tracked, the sort of application and sign up diversity figures, but we're just now tracking right through, so that we can, over time have that picture of, how many people are, there might be the interest there, but are there points where like a big proportion of people are dropping off, and why is that? And so I think, again, back to the point about data being gold,
Hmm.
without it you can't see those trends happening. So yeah, that's definitely something that we're looking at and paying a lot of attention to at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're just to kind of elaborate that on a bit of the detail around that. With those sorts of metrics, is it a case of when someone signs up through a registration form, you're asking them to
Yeah.
volunteer some of that information, and then
Yes.
that sticks with their profile, does it, throughout their kind of life cycle as a counsellor?
Yeah, yeah, correct. So it's obviously not mandatory information. People can choose whether they give the information or not. We, yeah, on our application forms or our booking forms for our courses, have a little sort of disclaimer basically saying we are really passionate about making the workforce as diverse as possible. You can help us to show that we're doing that by answering these questions and providing us with this information. And then, yeah, we use that to sort of track as they go through our training pathway.
Excellent. That's really good. And that's you asking for sort of feedback and surveys throughout that process as well. If you find, is there kind of an exit process if someone's dropped out halfway through, for example? Is there, I know not always you'll be able to get hold of them, I'm sure, but have you
Yeah.
try and have a follow up of, what happened? What was the blocker? What was the issue?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our tutors who are the trainers that deliver the programs, they are, I mean, they're amazing, and they provide such sort of personal support to any student going through the training. And so they're kind of constantly in contact with students. They have kind of tutorials throughout their courses, and they have, if someone is dropping out, and sometimes that's just because of life circumstances or, whatever. But if it ever is because of a reason of something about the course itself or the training or the support, etc., then we want to know about it and we want the feedback. We've also started really focusing a lot more on student support and making sure we have sort of learning support and reasonable adjustment processes and all of those things that go along with sort of inviting in a more broad range of people into our classrooms.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, excellent. And that's one of the things that I think shines through about Place to Be when you look at them online. And I'd encourage people to go and do that. Is you will see the inclusivity. It's a real push on that front. And as I mentioned it at the start, those sorts of, the Pride Month and making sure there's a real special kind of focus around some of those
Yeah,
events during the course of the year. I think you do a really good job of tailoring some of the messaging to different kind of cohorts and different demographics that you're looking to target and work with. So that's brilliant, and it's good to hear there's more of it coming. And I think it's very interesting that you talk so much about data and tracking of, I guess, how many people have gone through the funnel and how long it takes them to get there and so on. Just
yeah.
just out of interest, for someone that's maybe listening to this and thinking, oh, I'd be roughly interested in becoming a counsellor or exploring this, what would that look like? Is it just come in and express their interest, and then what typically does that sort of training length and the pathway look like for them?
Yeah. Well, I think the first step for anyone who is interested or thinking about training as a counsellor is to come along to one of our taster days. We hold taster day events in London and in Manchester every single month of the year, all through multiple date options. It's a really great day. We have it available for our anyone that joins Place to Be is always
Hmm.
encouraged to go on a taster day as well, because it's such a great insight into what kinds of skills do you have to be comfortable with and have to be able to be a child counselor. So there's role playing, there's creative activities, there's a listening activity that's really interesting that we do in the taster day, but it also really opens people up to the way that Place to Be train. Every training provider will kind of do things slightly differently, and it is important to find a training provider that is the right fit for you and how you want to approach this career. So that's really important to us as well, making sure people have the opportunity to kind of try before they buy, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
And then from there, it's very much like the length of time can kind of be anywhere from maybe 2-3 years minimum, but that's kind of at a part-time capacity. It's not full-time, to something longer than that if you did want to stretch out how you did the courses from there. The sort of introduction courses are all 1 day a week. For either there's an 8-week course and then there's a 15-week course after that. And we always try and offer sort of weekend and evening courses so that people can fit that around work if they need to.
Excellent. Very good. That was a good plug there. So yeah.
Thanks.
So, and people just go for those taster days, they would just go to the website and there'd be
Yeah.
played on there, would they? Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, the taster days, I mean, and we, our team are always on hand to answer questions and to help people if they're not sure on where to start, or if they've done some previous training and aren't sure how that fits in with the rest of our courses. We're always on hand to help people find the best starting point. But the taster day is pretty much the starting point for everyone, even if you have done some training before. So I'd recommend that.
Excellent. That's really good. Thank you very much, Jess. We're just about out of time for this session. So, were there any other closing thoughts or anything else you wanted to raise during this pod? This is your time.
Oh, put me on the spot.
Yeah. Or the other thing that we have been doing is asking, were there any questions that you would ask maybe a future guest on this? I know I put you on the spot there as well. So,
I think maybe a good question could be something around like, what's the best career move you've ever made, or sort of the best decision in your career could be an interesting one. And now I'm thinking how I would answer.
I was just thinking the same thing. How would you answer that, Jess?
I mean, I have to say, I do think career-wise, the move to the UK was a big one. I think also having the opportunity within Place to Be to progress internally has been hugely beneficial for my career, both in terms of confidence. I think having the confidence of the organisation to progress me through, and then also the opportunity to really move from one part of the organisation to quite a different part of the organisation has been hugely beneficial, and something I'm not sure I would have had the confidence myself to do if I was trying to do that in an external move. So yeah.
Yeah, I would just close on that. And I would say that you've embodied that with what you've done, in terms of, you were mentioning around just treating things as a learning experience, taking the chances, going into things with the mindset that you're going to go and learn something new. And I think that's very evident in the career path that you've taken, where even at Place to Be, starting on maternity cover and then taking a plunge into a whole new full-time role, and then moving into new departments. Those are things that not everyone does. Not everyone takes that plunge, but it's a credit to you that you've continued to grow and push yourself. And I think you've been rewarded for it as well. And certainly have a whole impact across an organization, which is very impactful, and get to see and touch lots of different areas of that organization as well. So yeah, I would just close on that and say thank you very much for sharing your thoughts. Really, really appreciate you having you on. It's been a pleasure, and we'll be watching your journey with very much great interest in the next few years ahead.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. It's been
Thanks,
great.
Chris. Thank you so much for listening to the Engage Volunteer podcast. Join us next time as we continue our journey through the world of volunteering. Until then, stay engaged and keep making a difference in your community.